What's up and welcome to our Kinda Funny Marvel's Secret Invasion discussions. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I am joined by, from the Deep Dive, Erik Voss.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me over. I love these new Rockstars and Kinda Funny collabs. It's like, you know, it's like chocolate and peanut butter, or half of a green face and half of a normal human flesh face.
Yeah, or in my case, half of an extremely red face with just an even more red face. I got sunburned. Leave your comments, leave your jokes. Let's just get out of our systems now, okay, everybody? I have to say that. It's not going to stop or start anything. But,
Proof you're not a Skrull because you are affected by radiation.
There we go. There we go.
You can trust Mr. Geddes.
And I'm the only one you can trust, apparently, because we don't know who to trust out here. Look at all these faces. It could be any of them. It could be all of them. It could be none of them. We'll have to wait and see. We're planning to do weekly breakdowns of every episode of Disney Plus's Marvel's Secret Invasion. I will be here each and every week. Will Erik be here each and every week? We're not sure yet, but he'll be here anytime he actually can make the time. And I appreciate the time, by the way. But if not, we'll have someone else join us. And don't worry, we will do Kinda Funny's MCU in review with the whole crew actually ranking, reviewing, and recapping this series when it's all done. So yeah, me,
I can't wait to see that.
Andy, Greg, Nick. You know, it's gonna be a fun time. Erik, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm stressed out. I mean, after this episode, no one's safe. My preconceived notions of what Marvel could do with these Disney Plus shows has been shattered. And I'm nervous. Like, watching these shows, I forget how stressful they can be. Watching them this way.
Because there's ramifications. Things happen that like might just completely change the MCU, both on the TV side, the movie side, everything in between. Like I was saying, we're going to break this down every week. You could watch it on youtube.com/kindafunny or roosterteeth.com. You can get it as a podcast by searching your favorite podcast service for Kinda Funny Screencast, and we will be right there for you. If you want to get the show ad-free, you got to go to patreon.com/kindafunny, just like our Patreon producer, Nathan Lamoth, has done. Thank you so very, very much. Today, we're brought to you by BetterHelp, but I'll tell you all about that later. Erik, I just want to start off with, so episode 1 of Secret Invasion. What are your thoughts on it?
I like this change of pace for the MCU. If you ask me at any given week, either my number 1 or number 2 MCU title is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and this show gave me complete vibes of that era of the MCU where you don't really know you can trust. Back then it was Hydra, now it's the Skrulls on Earth. I think
what's your 1 or 2? What are you debating?
Oh, the other one would be Guardians of the Galaxy. Awesome. Just depends what mood. If I'm like paranoid about the world right now, it's Winter Soldier. If I'm just feeling good and vibing, it's Guardians.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think episode 1, it was a bit of a slow burn. And I think there's a masterful twist that happens in the final scene that I think is so well done that I noticed only really on my second watch through of it after I was watching back through the episode. Are we okay to talk about spoilers?
Yes. By the way, this is absolutely full spoilers. So prepare yourselves. If you don't want to be spoiled, you're in the wrong place.
What a cool decision to have Gravik reveal himself by taking the form of 3 people who Nick Fury had crossed paths with. I thought was amazing. I definitely recognized the girl with the ball, but the first time I watched it, I didn't catch that it was the guy in the bar.
In the bar, yeah.
And it was the beret woman who was kissing and staring at him. It clocked something was weird about them.
I didn't realize. The woman I didn't realize was that makes sense. That makes sense.
It makes sense now, but I think if you missed that the first time, completely forgiven, because I missed it the first time. I had to watch it twice to see this, and I think if you don't catch that right away, I don't know if the episode hits as hard, because I think it's still a cool, shocking twist that happens in the Russian Unity Day celebration, but I think what really makes the episode effective is this sense of paranoia and dread that every move Nick Fury has made throughout the episode, there's been a Skrull architect 3 steps ahead of him. And that doesn't hit as hard unless you recognize that all 3 of those people are people that Nick Fury passed. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm super into it so far. I'm really enjoying the kind of slow burn aspect to it. I feel like that's not something we've gotten so much from the MCU, specifically in the TV show side of things. I'm still not completely sold on the fact of like, are they going to nail it? I feel like Star Wars Andor to me was like, oh wow, Star Wars could be this. Yeah. And I would love for the MCU to be this again, especially in TV form. And I feel like Secret Invasion was the one we all had our eyes on, of like, this could be the one, the Winter Soldier vibes. I mean, even this episode starting with the Moscow title treatment that looks same font, exactly like what we've
Lagos
seen. Exactly. In the Captain America movies, or even in Black Widow, right? That are, I'd say, a bit more on the serious, like, spy thriller side of the MCU. Which is, I'm a big fan of the MCU being able to be so many different things, whether it's cosmic, whether it's magic, whether it's just more like big superhero-y stuff, but then also have the grounded stuff, which I don't think is all one thing. We have this stuff, which is a bit more spy thriller, and then we have things like Hawkeye and Daredevil that are the more street level, and Echo upcoming, right? And I like this vibe a lot. I just feel like we've had so many good spy thriller shows and movies and books and things in the world that it really needs to kind of do something special to stand out. And like, how are you going to use the established MCU lore and characters to do something great with it? And I feel like the way this episode starts and the way this episode ends shows that, like, they're playing with their toys in a very efficient way. Where I love the reveals of the scrolls, the Maria Hill death at the end.
Insane.
Which, the way that they played this of getting Martin Freeman's character, what's his name?
Everett Ross.
Everett Ross in the beginning, and it's like, okay, cool. He's a Skrull. He gets it, whatever. We realize, like, when he falls off the roof or whatever, it's like, there's no way. They just killed him like that. It's like, oh, that wasn't him. It was a Skrull. That makes sense. To get to the end and have Nick Fury shoot Maria Hill, and you're like, oh, she's a Skrull. She's not. Like, her body's there. And you're like, there. Wow. The ramifications of that just for this show get me really excited, where every moment of this episode, I was like trying to get ahead of it and trying to figure it out, because that's how these spy thrillers normally play. And I'm like, who is a Skrull? Who's been a Skrull? Was Ross a Skrull the entire time?
Yeah.
Is this just that moment he was like looking like Everett Ross? Or is this the same Everett Ross that we saw recently in Wakanda Forever? I like that I'm asking all these questions, and I'm really excited for next week. I feel like the slow burnness of it totally works when it's led by such an amazing cast, and Samuel L. Jackson is just so good, and we've not quite seen him as Nick Fury like this. Right. Him playing the more old man Nick Fury, does he still got the stuff? But I'm convinced he's putting on a show still.
You think it's performative?
I do.
I agree. I totally agree.
I think that it's the question of, like, who's on whose side and how's this all going on, who's playing who. It's not just the Skrull side of things. It's not just the Russian spies. I think Nick Fury, the amount of times they're like, Nick Fury's always 5 steps ahead of the game. Nick Fury always knows this. He is. He knows what he's doing.
I think he is. I think in the same way that a great chess master can still be several steps ahead, several moves ahead, and still get totally blindsided by a rook. I think that's what happened to Fury this episode. I think he ultimately is. That's something I talk about in the Easter egg breakdown on the new Rockstars channel is Nick Fury, the moment he steps off that spaceship in the early scene, he winces in pain. And then I think they do it early on to establish this is an old man Fury. He's not wearing his eye patch anymore so that you can deliberately see his scars more clearly. However, as the episode goes on and he's talking to Sonya Fallsworth, he says that, like, hey, this is why I let your guys take me, is to get to you. I think he is putting on a show. I think he's limping on purpose. And when he's walking through the streets, I think he's got that Will Smith and Men in Black thing when he sees a little girl. Like, what's this girl doing out in the ghetto in the middle of the night?
He knows what's up.
She's up to something. So I think he totally knows what's up, but I think he was surprised at whether or not the Skrulls would strike first.
And I think on top of that, it's even if he's a step ahead of the game, there's so many pieces at play. It's not just a one-on-one chess game. I feel like it's like 4, 5, 10-way chess here going on, where even within the Skrulls, like, do we trust Talos? I don't think so.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
That's the thing, is, like, I feel like they're presenting this character as kind of the good guy. Like, we look at him as, like, the good side of Skrulls. Even early in this episode, he has a line of, like, oh, it's one of you. It's like, he's not one of us. Like, we are different. There are different types of Skrulls. And even Captain Marvel, the movie, I feel like did a really good job. And I enjoyed the twist on Skrulls of, the Skrulls are good guys. Like, they're just trying to find a home. And, like, they're not what we, from comic books, realize to be, like, the bad guys in this bad force. This show's kind of presenting that other side, which I think is interesting. But Talos' role in it all feels manipulative, even with Fury, who he's known for decades at this point. His relationship with his daughter, the reveal of it being his daughter, the reveal of the daughter working with the bad guys, or the bad Skrulls being involved with the death of the mother. All of it feels like they're giving us information with withholding some, like, key parts that I think are going to come into play, where even her working with the guy to come up with the plan of, like, hey, We'll put the infrared paint or whatever on the bag so you can find it. Like, how in it is she? Like, how does it go all the way to the top or just most of the way to the top? And I think that Nick Fury might understand what he knows, and he's 5 steps ahead of that game. But I feel like there's games being played that he's not even aware of yet.
Yeah, that's where the episode started to lose me a little bit. I mean, it's Marvel, it's MCU on Disney Plus, so obviously my eyes are glued to it the whole time. I'm never going to tune out completely. But I think it's more of like the A to B plot mechanics of dealing with this art dealer, Poprishkin, I believe his name was. I think there were some plot holes specifically with him. He was already in one of those scroll temple zapping shells the moment she walks in. They had already duplicated him. So why did they need to pay him money if he was already part of their scroll network? I was just kind of asking these questions, and I'm sure there are logical answers in it, like maybe they needed to pay him so that he could balance his books and then avoid suspicion from people he owed money to. I don't know, but the fact that I had to like do that extra legwork to justify why Fury and Talos were tailing Gaia, why Gaia had to pay him, why they just didn't already have the bomb parts that they needed to build the bomb if it was already in Skrull hands. I think they just did that to justify that
chase scene and like
so that Talos could find her and they could have this moment. She could fight with Maria Hill. I think it was all unnecessary. And even if you can't see the logical plot holes as you're watching, I think most audiences can feel it. We start to smell the BS, and then we realize that just something is languid, something's dragging in this story beat. And I think for a lot of people who might feel like this episode's too much of a slow burn.
Absolutely.
That might be why.
Yeah.
But by the end, I think it pulls you back into the conspiracy of it. A question I have for you, Tim. When we're reading Brian Michael Bendis' crossover comic, it begins in a very splashy way. There was like a road to Secret Invasion, but when the Secret Invasion storyline really began, they revealed some major Marvel characters were Skrulls. We learned Elektra was a Skrull. We learned Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, Hank Pym. There's an amazing moment where they all start to reveal themselves. Edwin Jarvis is like, reveals himself to be part of it. So like someone right in Tony Stark's orbit. Was revealing that Martin Freeman as Everett Ross was a Skrull, but not really revealing how long he's been a Skrull. Was that effective enough of a gut punch of a reveal for you?
So, yes and no. I think to your point, absolutely not. And I feel like that was them kind of setting the stage that this show is not a direct adaptation of the comic books in the same way that MCU stuff rarely is. You look at Civil War and the spirit of it's there, but overall it's not. I feel with Martin Freeman being a Skrull here, I still have the question of, how long has it been?
Yeah.
And is it even the same guy that we've known in these previous movies? And even if it was, does that really matter too much? Like, I don't know that has the ramifications necessary for it to be like, oh, wow, this actually means stuff. But then you start thinking about the cast that we have here and the potential cast that might show up in future episodes. And you think of Dave Fontaine's character, right? Who's Martin Freeman's wife. And we know that she's involved in government going-ons. We get Don Cheadle here being right-hand man to the president, who we rarely see in the MCU thus far.
Yeah, we've seen Matthew Ellis.
There's been references in Iron Man 3.
But since then we haven't known or seen.
And we know that in Captain America, what's it called now? Brave New World.
Brave New World.
Yeah, with the rename there. That Harrison Ford is going to be taking on the role of Thunderbolt Ross as the president. So in my mind, I'm like, I feel like throughout the course of this episode, this series, something's going to happen to the president.
Yeah, don't get too attached to Ritson, right? Check on your 25th Amendment language.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Is he going to die, or is it going to be revealed that the president has been a Skrull?
Right.
And how deep does that go? But then I feel like with Dave Fontaine, what's her first name?
Val.
Yeah, Val. With Val's connections to the U.S. government side of things and her connections to Martin Freeman, who's now known to be a Skrull, I feel like it's connecting in a way that is interesting, and that's where the ramifications can come into play, is the more actual government side that explains where we're at politically for a lot of the bigger MCU-wide things to take place. So while it's not Hawkeye and it's not Jarvis and it's not like these characters, Spider-Woman, like not characters that like super matter to like the superhero world, I think that it's potentially a really wise choice for them to make it really matter in the political world, which we have some big questions, right? Like we still have Tiamat Island situation, right?
Sure,
like out there where it's like, when are they ever going to get back to that? What's going on?
Yeah.
The government entities are the ones that are going to have to deal with the going-ons there. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it being the right call to start with him. And I also think that setup allowed the Maria Hill thing to really just hit better.
Yeah.
Because we do care about her. If only because of how long she's been involved.
Yeah, it's definitely a good bookend for Maria Hill. If that's where you want to end the episode, I think starting with Everett Ross is a good twist. It was interesting. The director of the series, Ali Salim, who we interviewed at New Rockstars, he said in another interview this week that he did not read the Secret Invasion comics and that it's not part of the story he's trying to tell, which I have to just say, if you're working on a Marvel show, if you're a director or writer, do not say this stuff in interviews. Just don't say it, because you know people are going to get pissed off at you if you say that. If you want to separate yourself, if you want to sequester yourself and creatively tell your own story, I understand that. But like, the reason these shows exist is because there is a fan base, and the Secret Invasion crossover event in the comics was massive. It's like saying, I mean, I get the people who worked on the Ms. Marvel show did the opposite approach. They said, gee, Willow Wilson, like a producer on this show, very important to us because they understood what those comics mean to people. Secret Invasion, they should have done the same thing. At least say that you read it and you're trying to do your own thing. But anyway, he said that he wasn't trying to do it. But also, I think that does open it up to introduce different people. And you just have to look at who the parallels are in the MCU. And I think you mentioned Val. For me, like 90% she's a Skrull. The way she's been so shady, that she's had so many ulterior motives. And I have like a Skrull checklist that I'm making
Purple hair?
Purple hair, always changing color. What? Tim and Erik Skrull confirmed? It's wild how shady she's been. And my pet theory is that we've had a Skrull Ross and a Skrull Val, and neither of them knew that the other was a Skrull, and that's why their marriage fell apart. It was like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith
That could
situation.
be super fun.
Yeah.
I can see them playing with that in an interesting way. Like going back to you talking about the director and just some of the weird calls. It's a very weird time for the MCU for so many reasons, whether it's fatigue in a billion different ways of not just Marvel, but just superheroes in general, streaming shows in general, content, everything, all of that. I feel like it's very important for Disney to say the right things, do the right things, present things in the right way, build up hype for this. This seems like the least hyped Marvel project in a very long time.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
I don't know anyone else. No one here's watched it yet.
Yeah.
And it's like back in the day, it would have been like midnight. We're doing this. And I feel like it's lines like that in interviews of like, I didn't even read the comic. It's like, this isn't going to get people excited. And then on top of that, the AI intro, which is no matter
Let's talk about
what
that.
your thoughts are on it, the conversation's now dominated by that. And I think that's important because while I think that there are the quality of it itself and does it fit the show and all of that, that's one conversation. Then there's just the reality of the time and place we live in right now where it's like, Disney, no.
What were they thinking? Like, granted, when I first saw it, it did look a little like Mid-Journey-esque to me, but I don't know enough about the technology to do an eyeball test and that sort of thing. I think some of the imagery that's in it are pretty cool, but now that I know, like, again, why did you have to say it proudly in an interview that you use this company to do it? Because now when I watch it, I'm like, oh, it wasn't an artist who did that. You just wrote it into an AI script prompt to come up with chess pieces that shapeshift into each other. So it just... some people are trying to preemptively defend it, like, oh, the whole theme of it is supposed to be ersatz imagery. Can we trust this? Is this actually a human or not?
And that all makes sense. That's all accurate.
To me, I call BS on that.
But it's not worth it. It's
not
just
worth it. Because the show's not about technology. If this were a show about Ultron or Ultron sentries that were posing as humans, if this were Vision Quest, where Vision is trying to hide in plain sight, that'd be one thing. But this is about xenophobia. This is about Skrull invasion. This is about nativism, displacement, cultural identity. This is about flesh. And you cannot have a robot AI come up with a prompt to do the opening title sequence of a show about that kind of theme. I just think it was tone deaf to do that. It's tone deaf to just admit it in an interview like that on release day. Like, I'm not that... I sound madder than I actually am about it. I just think this is like an unforced error by Marvel. Yeah, like, they 100%. Cannot afford unforced errors right now. They have to stick the landing on this show. And for them to just make weird moves like that, it's like, guys, come on. There's a good show here. There's the best cast I've seen on any Marvel Disney Plus show. You have Oscar nominees and Oscar winners in this cast. you have a good director. You have Brian Tucker writing these, one of the best writers on Game of Thrones. Like, it should not struggle like this. It's Brian Michael Bendis' storyline was amazing. It's so relevant to right now. You shouldn't be fumbling like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, you're so right. You're absolutely right, Eric. We're gonna take a quick word from our sponsors, and when we get back, we're gonna get back to talking about the show at hand. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. I know this from experience, how often it just seems easier to care about others and to keep it moving. But when we spend all of our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burnt out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. Some of my very best friends use BetterHelp and love how helpful it can be for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/KindaFunny today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/KindaFunny. So moving back to the episode here, what were there any other like talking points that you have?
Yeah, the question of Soren. I think Soren is. I missed her this episode. I love this idea that she brought these seeds of the Santomilica plant, and that she had this dream for what Skrulls could be on planet Earth, and that she was killed off screen. I think structurally they did this to remove any doubt that Maria Hill is actually dead or not. Like this. Her best-known Skrull counterpart is Soren, and Soren's off the board now. But I want to know exactly the circumstances of her death. Like it sounded like Gravik killed her, but we don't know exactly how.
But there's still a chance that it's all a lie,
right? True. We can't trust this
I
one.
think she's dead, but I do think that, and maybe I'm just getting like way wild into this, but I think that Talos is being a little weird. And I think that him talking about like, you work for the person that killed your mom, like all that stuff. It's like, are you the person that she's working for? Like, is there like, there's a person above the main guy that we're seeing that's presented as the antagonist right now? Like, it kind of feels like there's going to be, I'm seeing a lot of similarities in the kind of plots and the way that the antagonists are going about things as the Flag Smashers in Falcon and the Winter Soldier so far, where these displaced people that are just trying to find a way home, like just trying to have a new home, they'll go to any length to do that because they feel like they've been robbed of something that was theirs. And I'm hoping that this comes together in a way that is a little clearer than that. I feel like that was such an amazing setup and they kind of fumbled it in execution.
Yeah, Flag Smashers was rough. One way they could fix it is just by establishing that the Flag Smashers were another Skrull splinter group, like that they were part of the Skrull. I guess you'd get a little messed up there with the super soldier serum, but I think, and Skrulls are already strong, and we saw Carly Morgenthau use some of it, but I think it could still work. I think people don't have that as clearly in their head, and that just could be, because we know there's this global network of different terrorists that have these different objectives, but they're all part of the Skrull operation. I guess that could work. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't want this to be another Flag Smashers.
I see the potential here. Like, I feel like there's a story they can tell that makes a lot of sense. And if they have the right twists and turns, that it could kind of like be buttoned up in this great little adventure for Nick Fury and the team. But going back to Maria Hill, it is interesting that the last time we saw her, she was actually Soren, the wife of Talos in the end of Far From Home, or I guess throughout Far From Home. So besides that, when was the last time we saw Maria Hill? I feel like it's been a long time.
Tony Stark's funeral, I think she was there for that, but so was everybody. She was in, now you got me lost. I know she was in Infinity War, in the post-credit scene of Infinity War. That's when she and Nick dusted away. And I think, that would have been the last time she had dialogue, real dialogue, because, the Maria Hill we saw in Far From Home was Soren the entire time. I kind of want to know where Maria Hill has been. After I understand now they're establishing Nick Fury shortly after Tony Stark's funeral went up and formed Saber, which that's something we should talk about. Saber, what the point of Saber is. It sounds like Nick Fury had a bit of paranoia after Thanos was freaked out and wanted
suit of armor around the world.
Suit of armor around the world. Could this also be part of his promise to try to find a new Skrull home world.
Which I think that is like, so when we're this many projects, like 40 projects into the MCU, there's always going to be like unanswered questions that they leave open for things, but also just like plot points that might not get revisited for 10 movies just because like it's within a franchise or whatever it is. Captain Marvel at this point was almost 5 years ago. Like,
yeah,
that's pretty wild to think about. Like, I don't remember a lot of the exact beats, but one of the things was the promise was find a new home for the Skrulls. Clearly that failed for a multitude of reasons, like Thanos got involved and all that. But it is interesting that now they seem to be trying to make Earth the new home, and that's what the plot is here. Nick Fury just trying to protect things versus actually coming up with the solutions. That's where I'm a little bit more lost on. Is this old man Fury, or is he playing a trick on everybody and he actually is in more control? Like, does he have a plan for them? I'm not sure about that part of it.
Yeah. I can't say with confidence that the people working on this show have a clear enough understanding of who Nick Fury is and how to. We just have not seen it in the MCU on Disney Plus, with the exception of Loki, where they actually stuck the landing of a character had a plan the whole time. And I think with Loki, we were just so overwhelmed with the performance of it and the mystery of them going through the Citadel that we were able to look past some plot holes. But there were some plot holes in Loki with He Who Remains' plan of why would he court Loki and Sylvie this way. You can definitely thread a cord through it all to make it all make sense. But there's a couple moments where it's like, well, why would you bring in people to destroy you? Like, we still don't know exactly what the ending of Loki was. I think that's part of the allure and the appeal of it. But with every other Disney Plus series, literally every single other one, there are the villains in it. Their plans by the end of the series do not make sense. They're filled with plot holes. So I haven't seen a good track record of Marvel sticking the landing. So I hope that they're able to prove me wrong with the Skrulls. And I sound like a hater right now. I know. I've liked all these shows. I enjoy the ride. I'm someone who will judge a show based off of the way I feel as I'm watching it, as opposed to after the credits roll in the final episode. So I love WandaVision, even though a lot of people think that the show didn't stick the landing. To me, that and Loki are my number one and number two.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
But in terms of like, are we going to feel satisfied about what Fury's plan is and what Gravik's plan is by the end of this? I just wouldn't judge the show that way. That's all I'll say.
That's a good point. I also think a thing that I know I'm always like, all right, cool. Where is this in the timeline? What does that mean? What answers are they going to give us here to things I've been wondering? What has Maria Hill been up to? What has this been? What Nick Fury's doing Saber? We've been seeing that now in a couple different ways, like the end of WandaVision, even, right? With Monica Rambeau being told, hey, from a Skrull, you're going up there to see him, and Far From Home's End, all that. But there's been. So it starts with present day, which could mean a million different things, right? Like present day for us or for them. Like, I'm not really exactly sure where that falls in terms of like the other shows and movies and things like that. But they were giving us at least some, like, this is where this character is here and all that. Like Don Cheadle's character of Rhodey is like, all right, we saw him in Falcon and Winter Soldier talking to Sam, and now he's here kind of with the president. And that kind of just sets the tone of, he's not doing superhero stuff on the regular. He seems more like a political figure than like how he used to be in the like Iron Man 1 through 3 days, as opposed to the Infinity War Endgame. I am legit one of the core Avengers trying to save the world. So it is interesting to think about, like, what is the status of the Avengers, and the way the Avengers are even talked about in relation to Nick Fury. They make the joke about what'd you get for your midlife crisis, and he's like, I got the Avengers. And it's just interesting to see a Nick Fury without heroes, like without, I don't even want to say his toys, but without his answer to any problem, right? So I do feel like that is the one weakness he has going into this show, is the only people he has are Talos and Maria Hill. Now Maria Hill's dead. Is Talos like bad to begin with or to end with? Like, I don't even know, but like, I'm interested in all these things. I just hope they answer those questions in satisfying ways.
Yeah, we don't really know what Nick Fury's network is. For a while, it really did just consist of Maria Hill and anybody who knows how to fly a helicarrier, and then some Skrulls who still pick up his calls. Like, yeah, I think Fury is pretty isolated now from being out of the game, and that's something that they established early on. I think it is the most interested I've been in Nick Fury ever, and I think that's one thing this show's doing really well. It should have just been called Fury. If it's not going to be following like the real a paranoia in the sense that anybody could be a Skrull. And we'll see. It's too early to judge. But I mean, this show could have just been called Fury, and then maybe it could have been its own prelude to a true secret invasion thing. But that's how I felt about every time they've adapted. Like Civil War. I'm one of the haters. I don't hate Civil War, but people call me a hater of Civil War because I think like it wasn't a true Civil War story. It was like a good Captain America story, good Captain America Tony Stark story, but it didn't have the stakes and the all-encompassing feel that the Civil War comic event did, where literally everyone was drawn into it. That's what Secret Invasion is supposed to feel like. And I don't know if we're going to see Thor show up in this. I don't think we're going to see Hulk show up in this.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, let's end the episode here. Do you think we see... What's the biggest cameo or like biggest appearance you think we get in this show?
I think... Okay, so I think the craziest cameos we'll see... I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus is showing up.
Yep.
I think 90%. For people who might not be on people's Skrull radar, Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan, I think could be a Skrull option, and Wong. Only because those two guys have good relationships with Disney. Favreau is producing all the Star Wars shows. Sure, he'd walk over to the set, and then it's the Wong CU. He's been in everything. And like I have another video in the works about like the Skrull checklist. There's a specific reason why Wong might be a Skrull that you might not think about.
Yeah, I mean, when you even just think about locations and stuff, like there's been a lot of Russia in this, which I do think is interesting. I think it's cool to kind of set up more of the government entities as well, and them talking about the circus and all the like the James Bondy type situations over there. I think that's cool, especially as an analog to having SHIELD, having Saber, these like more superhero-y type organizations. So yeah, I'm interested in how people can get back to DC or Russia or whatever it is. Wong has a portal. You know what I mean? He can sling ring. He can go wherever he wants. So like that could be interesting. But yeah, I'm not expecting any big superhero cameos or appearances in this. I do think that it'll be more the Vals and any human character. I think that they're the ones that are ripe for play here in terms of there being a Skrull and what that could actually mean looking back. And I do think them showing the old footage of Nick Fury getting dusted is them showing that they're willing to do that. And I personally am hoping for some, hey, here's a human character that even if it was Val, maybe someone with a little bit more legacy in the MCU, and do the whole, let's show old footage of them, of all like the moments. I'm always a sucker for that.
Yeah,
like
me
even
too.
Far From Home did it.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
And I feel like Far From Home, sorry, I'm going a little long on this one, but Far From Home, when you look at the themes of that movie and the fact that there were Skrulls in that movie is weird. Right?
Yes.
That was always like a weird call of like, why even have that be a part of this Spider-Man story, that there's a reveal that it's not actually Nick Fury and Maria Hill, with the exception of we had to give an excuse for why he was making dumb decisions.
Right.
But they could have just put a different character then. They could have done so many things. They had Skrulls in that for some reason. And I think Mysterio's whole plan of using misinformation to create a new reality for himself and like to make himself look like the good guy, that's kind of what's happening here, at least from what we see so far, of the Skrulls' plan.
Could a Skrull have been part of Team Mysterio?
Potentially.
Because the Skrulls are now directly benefiting from the fake news trend that started with that Mysterio and J. Jonah Jameson building on it. They reference it vaguely, the difference between websites and real news outlets, and you can't really trust it anymore. Yeah, that's an amazing theory. I think that's brilliant.
It's just when they started talking about, there was the lines of like, this country started a war with this country, we started a war with this country, and all this stuff, and it's all of them manipulating all of this. I'm like, this sounds kind of similar to Mysterio's plan, just on a global level. So, and then when I was thinking, I was like, when's the last time we saw the Skrulls? Far From Home.
Far From Home. So, all right, can we put some odds on William Ginter Riva, the guy who's like, I'm not Tony Stark, who's part of Team Mysterio, and he worked for the Stark organization. He would have been in Stark's orbit for years and years and years. I think there's a good chance because he's friends with Favreau. He's like a director, that guy who played Ralphie in A Christmas Story. He's like a long-time Hollywood guy. I feel like he'd put on green makeup.
I would love to see that. And that's what I'm talking about, like the retcon footage of like, because they did that in Far From Home, like with him, of like, oh yeah, he was there the whole time. I want to see that for a different character. And I think having him do that as well, and they could even show the Far From Home stuff. I don't know if they can.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be Sony, but they can show Iron Man stuff.
Yeah. Hey, interesting stuff. Let us know in the comments below who you think is a Scroll, because this is Scroll Watch 2023. We'll be talking about the show each and every week. There's 6 episodes for this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 6 episodes. Let us know what you thought of episode 1. Erik, thank you so much for joining me. Where could people find you?
You can find me on the New Rockstars Network, which is now 3 channels. We have the main New Rockstars channel, we have the Deep Dive, where I do special film analyses, and then we have a 3rd channel, the Break Room, which is where all of our after shows are going to live. So our Secret Invasion after shows will be on the Break Room, at Break Room NR. So those 3 channels. And Tim, thanks so much for having me on. This has been a blast.
Of course, man. Until next time, have a marvelous day.
Bye, everybody.